strange to hear yourself when you talk, though, isn't it?
It is.
In a weird sort of through your ears, but
it is.
you hear them through your ears anyway.
But you lock in. Once you lock in, it's kind of like.
Welcome to Chew the Chat Podcast.
Bit of CBD in that. Or weed. Do you smoke?
Smoke sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to quit smoking.
Cigarette smoke.
Yeah, and
the
weed
other.
as well. Yeah.
What is it? Is it kind of?
Do you know, fairly recently, it's been. I've done it since I was maybe about 12. Was the first time I tried it, and recently, practicing a lot of meditation. It actually, I find it has a negative effect rather than an actual positive effect on me.
Right, I see.
So it kind of, I don't want to say it lowers my consciousness, but I think it, I don't know, it's a strange.
You recognise your pattern.
Yeah, I recognise that it's actually, it was good for me while it was good for me, but now it just isn't.
Oh.
So I see her as a Mary Jane, if you want to call her, as like a seductive temptress. So you can use it and it might help you solve things. You're going through issues and things like that, it might help you solve it. But then in the long run, actually, you find that you've become accustomed to something that maybe isn't actually doing you any favours.
Yeah. And you take it for granted and it becomes comfort.
Exactly.
And you can sort of abuse it even.
Mm-hmm.
Graham Hancock had similar.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing at all, because there's so many healing benefits in it. But I watched something about him when he was speaking about it, and I was almost every day it was a kind of other thing, and then it slowly backed off for a bit, mainly because there was some point in my life when my dad was going somewhere. He was moving to Canada, and I decided to stop doing it because I had to go for a medical. So I had like a year off, and then went back to it. And then years and years later, it became something that I just started to feel that it was actually pulling me more into myself, but not quite in a way that I was doing through meditation.
Right, okay.
So it changed the feeling of it.
So when you took a year off, I mean, we're jumping straight into the conversation here, Stuart. Just quickly, Stuart Tasker, tattoo artist. We've been sort of kind of put in touch with one another through flotation, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Through Kieran at Go Deep, who sponsors of this show. But yeah, you mentioned there, your dad went to Canada. So, and you packed in using any kind of.
Well, I've never been on anything really heavy anyway. Yeah, it was just cannabis for me.
But marijuana, So you just said, right, that's it. So how that was easy enough. That was just like, yeah, cool.
There was incentive behind it.
Yeah.
So when with anything, if there's incentive behind you doing something, you just crack on and do it, don't you? Mm-hmm. And because it was medical basis, so it was, if he was going to have this medical done for his whole family for him to move there, if there was any failure on my part,
would you be moving as well then?
I think the option was there, but I didn't. But this was 2003.
Okay.
And I didn't.
How old would you have been then?
I was just 15, just about to do GCSEs, I think, at that time. And it'd been something that had been in my life for a while already, just from...
Really?
Yeah,
At that age?
Yeah, just from knocking about with the young lads that you knock about with back in the day, you know?
Of course, yeah.
And still see a lot of them now, but it was something that a lot of them stopped doing, but I carried on doing. And it was something that was enjoyable. It can be enjoyable, but I just find now that it kind of lowers me a little bit rather than heightens me. And
what about, obviously you're a tattoo artist, you disappear into... the zen of your drawing and the thought and the imagination. I imagine at one time that was probably a part of that, was it? Or was it... It
definitely helped.
Yeah?
It definitely helped for focus. I mean, if anyone's ever taken it, you know that it can help you focus on one thing for a long period of time. And it definitely helped through the learning curve through all that. But it definitely became something that became too much. Because I think meditation replaced it for me. And then... in that case, you've got something that's heightening your consciousness through your own introspective kind of look on things. Yeah. That then you come to use something external, and it doesn't quite have the same effect.
Shows itself in a way.
Yeah, and you kind of it comes on to you more. Like when you feel it, like coming up, and you think, oh, now it's affecting me, and then it becomes an internal thing. But when you use meditation as an internal thing, you're using it not to silence your thoughts, but to become the observer. And to watch over your thoughts, when you take a substance that allows for that same level of introspection, but you know it's an external force. It's not as strong, if you know what I mean.
You're at a point then when you're kind of looking at all of this. God, yeah, you've gone. To say even when you were 15 and it had been in your life for a while then, so you've come through all the stages of kind of looking at this and being, I guess, honest with yourself as well about this.
I think it's very important to be honest with yourself about just about everything, but yeah, definitely it had so many effects on my life as well because of the people that I hung around with. Great people, spent a lot of years with them, and we did it as something because we didn't have a lot to do in a village that we lived in, and it became an everyday part of life. And as it grew with me, and it became something that was on a daily basis. And then, when this time came, it's not even that long ago. This was maybe less than a year ago. Right,
okay. But was it building up for a while? Could you feel
definitely.
Sort of the inner dialogue of like, God, I need to change gears, something's not right, I need to get out of this habit? Like often we fall in the habits, the groove, don't we?
Yeah, because I think that it made me... You want to have this period of no mind when you come to a meditation. You want to have this period of no mind. And when you come to have something that gives you no mind, when you might want to get something done, even though previously you may have used it to help you get something done.
Yeah,
it kind of changes its perspective.
And even convince yourself during that maybe that was the thing that enabled you to get over the line of getting the thing done. I can only, I can only do my best work when I'm.
Well, I've never done any work.
Right.
I've prepared for work while stoned, but I've never done any work while stoned.
Of course, being with the human body under your touch.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes I know people that do, and they would fantastic work with it, but I felt like that. It was good while I was preparing, but when it came to actually doing it, sometimes your mind can wander, and that's the last thing you want.
Yeah, when you time it's just body.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why it's hard for me to stop smoking as well.
Right.
Because I don't smoke a ridiculous amount, but when you get to that point where you're like, oh, I could do with a fag, and then if that's in your mind, it just repeats itself over and over and over again. And you're
poking
you. Yeah, and you're tattooing, and all you can think about is a fag.
Before you know it, you're
someone's got a fag tattoo on them.
Yeah.
So you might as well just take that break to have it.
Yeah.
But I can do without it for a while, but it's just when it starts niggling, it starts saying away. It's like any kind of addiction. It starts to tell you that it's time. It's time for you to replace me.
Okay then. So your background, an artist, you mentioned that you grew up in a little village on the outskirts of town, close-knit crew of friends, I would imagine, and you've been through, like you say, all these stages. So what was it like growing up for you?
My parents weren't religious, but my nan was. So she was very important in introducing spirituality into my life at the very beginning. But it was Roman Catholic.
Right.
And it wasn't that I didn't immediately go, no, this is not for me. It kind of sat with it. I was an altar boy. I did everything. The one thing I didn't do was go to the Sunday school. I'd always sit with my nan and listen to these stories that they tell you in church. And I constantly wondered whether it's never the right time to put your hand up and say, oh, I've got a question about that story you're telling. They just don't have that in the Catholic Church. You don't get to question what the priest is saying. You listen, you take what you do from the story, you move on. And you use that story for the week, and he comes and tells you another one a week later. But then, so moving down towards Lincolnshire, I'd done all the Holy Communion and all things like that. And moving to Lincolnshire was the point where I started making more friends, started doing things that were a bit less introvert, So I did a lot of drawing as a kid, and then started becoming a bit of an extrovert with my older stepbrother. We started going out with him a lot, and our friendship group became the same. And it kind of then put me in this, none of this stuff, it doesn't count. It doesn't count in life, doesn't apply to life. Right. And you really get into it. Right. Become a young teen as well. Yeah. You're a little bit rebellious. I was never a bad kid. One thing I did was talk too much. And I kind of talked into myself about, so I think there was one point where my nan asked if I was going to come and do my confirmation, which is your choice. You then choose whether you want to be a part of the church or not.
Yep.
And I said no. I don't regret that decision. I don't regret any decisions I've ever made, even the bad ones, because I think they lead you to who you are now.
They're part and parcel granularly of who you...
Exactly.
Cool.
But what it did was it made me question for a long time religion as a whole. I completely denied it. No, there's no God, no, nothing like that. Then meditation came along, and threw all that in the air again.
Wow.
And said, is that true?
Well, listen.
Is that everything that you thought actually true? So I had to start questioning not only myself through meditation, but through everything in your external life.
It feels to me, Stuart, like there's been something in you, something, whatever that. I mean, I often find this with people that I went to art college. I enjoyed drawing. My kids draw now. There's an escape. There's something that happens where you go somewhere, and I feel like so many people I meet, like yourself, who are kind of creatively driven. We're all really trying to express something, and I feel like a lot of the people how do I put this right? I've never got the words. There's something, like you mentioned, you kind of alluded to it with the tattoos. I often think this when I'm having tattoos, and I think, I love art. I love the idea that image is formed and shared, and and
seeing what comes out of someone else's mind.
Yeah, and kind of recording it on a body, or like for me, I'm probably like a lot of people. Tattoos are kind of like timestamps of chapters of life and things like that. You've got like a real strong. There's something pulling you somewhere. It feels to me.
Yeah,
you want to know more.
Yeah,
you want to know more, and in doing so, you want to kind of unravel yourself and find the answers, and also kind of connect dots. I feel similar, very similar.
I think it's one of those things that I truly believe that everybody will have that, and it's whether or not it's some point in your life or just before we go on to whatever's next. That I think everybody's going to have it. It's just what period in your life it comes, and I guess it actually happened for me while my wife was pregnant with my third child.
So how many children have you got then?
3.
You've got 3 children.
2 little girls and a little boy.
And how old are the children?
Amelie is 9. Ada May is 7 years old, and Jesse's about to turn 5 in about 2 weeks.
Jesse is a boy?
Yes.
I've got a boy called Jesse.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
We absolutely fell in love with the name. And, it was really, really, because all this thing changed while I was pregnant. Well, we were pregnant, people say that.
Yeah,
but
we were pregnant, yeah.
It was just her. I sat by and watched.
I know, fair play.
There were some really strange experiences for me internally, as well as for my wife. So there was this really strange experience where she's a prolific dreamer. It absolutely astounds me that she wakes up and has these dreams that are like completely different lives.
She can recollect.
Completely. She can actually have a nap during the day and fall back into the same dream that she was thinking about.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Has she done any kind of work on that? Or
I've been trying to push her towards it.
Yeah.
I actually took her to London to meet the author of a book. His wife was doing a documentary about astral projection. We went to it and he was hosting it. And there was like a little after party drink afterwards. I wanted her to meet him so that it maybe push her to start going lucid. Because I've been talking about it for a while. I've been wanting to do it, but my dreams are not now. They were.
I was going to ask you, with you smoking and then not smoking, because that has a big effect on a lot of people.
It does, but not really for me, no. So, I've never been able to recollect dreams. But I'm keeping a diary. Now, this diary is 3 years in the making. That could be 6 months between a dream that I can remember.
Really?
Yeah. It's really difficult. Recently, I've had a lot of really introspective dreams that are quite vivid, and I'm quite, impressed that I can remember them. But with her dreaming, so she said to me, okay, I'll give this lucid dreaming a go. And the first night, she was lucid, completely lucid. And she actually had a dream that she'd been recurring since she was a child. And she got past the point in which she would always wake up.
Oh, wow.
In the first ever time she went lucid.
It's getting pretty heavy on the first go.
Yeah, and I think she likes the escape of dreams, so I don't think she wants to play about with them too much. She likes what it gives her, the I don't know if it's the time away or the different worlds you get to see.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to meet this guy. He wrote a fantastic book. It's called Dreaming in Darkness, Charlie Morley. A phenomenal book, and it can help you push you towards being lucid, but also using lucid dreaming as a method of working with your shadow.
Okay.
which is something
and your shadow being like a metaphor for what
the side of you that you don't like.
Yeah, the
that
dark.
You hide from everybody else.
The truth of yourself.
Yeah. Well, not just the truth, because it's a half truth.
Yeah.
Because
of course, because it takes the dark and the light and the good and
all
the bad.
things that we suppress.
Well, like you mentioned floating earlier, and floating for me, so much of my initial experiences of floating was a lot of that shadow, a lot of that darker self, just fucking rearing straight up and saying, "Let's have this squared up, shall we? Let's sort this out, okay? Let's,
Completely
and
agree.
it could be as menial as, some days it could just be communication I need to make, and I need to get better at making phone calls, and I need to call my dad, and I need to call my granddad, I need to pop in, or it might be, some deep, dark, lie I'm telling myself about my fundamental being,
I think there's, I'm not sure if it is actually like a Japanese proverb or anything like that, but I remember reading it saying somewhere that the Japanese believe we have 3 hearts. Mm-hmm. There's the one we show the world, the one we show those close to us, and the one we keep to ourselves.
Oh, that makes sense.
And I guess the shadow work is looking at that one, befriending that part that you keep to yourself, that you don't want anyone else to know about you. Because there are certain things that we do in life, certain decisions, certain thoughts that we have, that we go, hey, better not share that with the world.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty dark.
And you even, fucking hell, am I even having that thought?
Exactly.
Myself, never mind.
That's why I think people who are able to just spit that out, I love being around people like that, because you there's no off switch when it comes to saying
not
what you
filtering
think.
anything.
No, it just comes out. And it makes me wonder whether or not they've actually got hardly anything stored.
Yeah.
Because they just say what they think.
Yeah, there's just that selfless kind of, like, it is what it is, and you just don't hold on to anything. Therefore, there is nothing. The kind of Alan Watts kind of proverb, isn't it? Is you're holding on to, but there's nothing to hold on.
Exactly.
So
yeah. So we're coming back to that dream that I got onto the topic of. That having 2 kids, absolutely love the 2 girls. The third child, Jessie, me and my wife questioned whether or not we were ready for a third, because they're all really, really close in age. And then I had this change in me. So obviously, not only did I have this change introspectively, I now have to start trying to teach my kids in something about I don't understand. I'm actually now trying to discover it more for myself. Like, teach kids about the world, but I don't know fuck all about it.
Yeah, scary.
It is scary. And there's a lot of frustration involved in teaching kids, and you look back at what you were like and you wonder whether you were like that. And we had a conversation with my daughter the other day. She's 9, the oldest, Emily, and I remember the exact same experience when I was a kid. The one thing that I feared the most was when that silence kicks in, when that darkness comes, and then the idea of death and dying comes in. She had that 2 nights ago.
Really?
She's had it quite a lot, and they're few and far between, but sometimes she just won't be able to sleep because of it.
And what is that, just sort of thought process just coming in, or is there anything triggered in the world that's happened?
Well, I think maybe now it's coming out. It's come out before, but now because of what's going on in the world, everybody's a bit paranoid about what's going on. And a 9-year-old child trying to understand that you have to social distance from everybody you meet is very difficult. And then hearing the news, and we don't watch the news in a house, but news filters its way into your house, doesn't it? Of course, and it's sometimes misguided, some it's misinterpreted. But the idea that she thinks that you could catch this and die is hard to get out of a 9-year-old's head.
Oh man, yeah, that upsets me about that side of this.
I don't think that people that report the news are actually. I wonder if they're reporting or creating. I don't want to go too much into that.
No,
but
I'm with you.
It's one of those things where you put that thought in a child's mind, all of a sudden.
We're being asked at the moment, Stu, if we want the kids to go back. They've kind of the school have been asking us in the group messages about what do we think, and my wife and I are like kind of if it's going to be social distancing and gloves and masks and things, I don't want my 6 and 5-year-old being in that environment, 'cause it's going to fry their understanding. And this is at the point when they're developing,
and they need to be social.
Yeah,
at this point in their
and
life.
I just think they're better off here.
But then they want to send the ones that are the youngest back who won't even comprehend what's going on. Like going back to my son. So while she was pregnant with him, we were questioning all that. She had a dream, my wife did, and it became quite a telltale sign of what was going to come for us with Jessie. she dreamt of her granddad who died when she was younger, and he just left her this message in her dream saying, keep it, it'll be worth it. So from that moment on, she was like, we're having this baby. It's not questionable anymore. We're having it. Even whether we both were uncertain whether or not we were ready.
You've got a strong feeling that
she had decided that something else is telling me that, it's worth it. And I mean, it always is when you see a child.
Of course.
And you see a
but
child
I know what you
born.
mean. You get sometimes little signs when you've got doubt or you're not sure, or where does life go from here? Whatever it could be anything kind of.
I think it works out. I mean, I'd have to ask her for the details, but it works out. Either the dream was on her granddad's birthday, or we found out she was pregnant, because this dream came before the pregnancy. It was one of those things. Yeah, it was one of those. It's a really weird time, and it kind of really understanding it was really weird, because that's when she'd made the decision that she had to keep it. Now I'm struggling to remember whether or not that was just before the pregnancy or during it, when she'd come to the conclusion, or whether she had completely all the way through. She was like, "No, this is staying," and it works out. Yeah, it was over his birthday when we found out she was pregnant, and then 9 months from that date, Jessie was born. And during her pregnancy was when this process happened with me, with the change in introspection.
Fucking hell, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, he's a special little kid. He got diagnosed with autism about 1.5 years ago, and it was really difficult for us to understand. We walked into this room, them telling us that we were going to get this process where we were going to find out over the next 4 years whether or not he'd got it or not, and they told us within an hour. So we kind of left that place, the paediatrician, and was like, does that mean it's really obvious? I mean, we'd already noticed little signs, but we thought, we had 2 girls, and people said, oh, boys are slower. Don't worry, boys are slower.
Right.
And we were like, okay, fair enough. We didn't take anything. We didn't, push any of them to do anything or anything like that. And then when we came out with this decision that we'd been given, that he'd been diagnosed, we were like, sat in the car, like, I don't really know what to think about that.
Wow,
it was upsetting. At the same time, it was like, well, it makes a little bit of sense, but it was so abrupt. And I've had some moments with him that are profound, that you can't explain, that I have not been able to have with him.
And how old's he now then?
He's 5.
5.
Yeah.
5.
I've had some moments with him that you just think, he seems to know more than what, like, whether he's perceiving things in a different way. Like, obviously, you know what I said earlier about not being able to see anything through someone else's eyes. You can't. It's difficult to communicate with him. He's getting a lot better at it, but it's difficult to communicate with him. But then sometimes I think he's seeing the world in a different light. So basically, the first time I went to this meditation group that I'd started, so she was pregnant with him at the time. I went to this meditation group, thinking, my friend said, go, I'll go, see what it's like. And I think the first time it was
Is this the wise man?
Yeah, he said to me to go. And so I found this group and I went along. Then I had quite a peaceful, it was quite a nice experience. I'll come again next week. And I think it was the next week where I had this, I guess you want to call it a transcendental experience.
Fucking hell.
Where she'd guide us into this place, and you follow what they're saying, basically. There's, washing in the river, walking on the grass, you can feel it on your feet, all the kind of stuff they do in guided meditations. But then it wasn't long before I was no longer sat in a hallway in Silk Willoughby. I was there. What she was talking about, I was actually there. I was walking on that grass. And then this hill lifted from underneath me. Lifted me up, walked up, I think like stepped on some clouds or something like that. And then I looked down and I saw 2 characters just sat there waiting. And one was a bear and one was a nun. And then I came out of it. The reason I came out of it was because I could hear like a narration going on. And somebody was talking to me, so I was like, and I started blinking, and then I was in the room again. And I was like, what?
Wow.
That's what made me start questioning everything again. That one meditation is the one thing that said to me, everything might not be quite what you think it is.
And so I guess you've tried a million ways to try and piece that together and what that meant and what it led to, and have you come up with anything that seems...
Well, I think through the journey of searching that I think people do in this kind of a situation, like when you have an experience like that, it's difficult because you can tell as many people as you want about it. No one's going to really believe that you had that experience. Truth comes from experience.
Yeah, first.
You can only know that truth for yourself once you've experienced it.
Of course.
You can't know what it's like to go bungee diving if you've never been bungee diving.
Yeah, doesn't matter how much YouTube you've watched, you have.
Yeah, I think there's a story about a man who was loved papayas, and he loved papayas so much that he had them every day. And then someone said to him, "Oh, have you ever tried a mango? Mangoes are amazing." And then he was, "Oh, mangoes are amazing." So he started talking about mangoes instead of papayas, but yet he'd never tried a mango.
Right.
So then eventually he would go back to papayas because that truth of the mango never existed within him.
Right.
Because he'd never tried it.
Right.
So he had to go back to papayas. And it's only when you experience that he could have actually said, yes, the mangoes are better. I'll stay with the mango. And I think what I'm trying to get at is that people can try and say to you, "Come on, mate, you think you were just
do you not think you'd not
fell asleep or
yeah.
something like that?" But it was so profound and so real that I said, no. So I started questioning it, started looking at things, and I think the first direction you head in with things like that is like conspiracy theories. And fell in that little rabbit hole for a while. And when I did these meditations, sometimes it would come up again. And this particular character, the bear, would come up over and over again in these meditations. And one night I was meditating in my conservatory and I felt it coming again. And then my little boy woke up screaming. So I was like, oh. I said to I think my missus was laying in bed just resting, and it was late at night. So I said, I'll deal with him. I'll go sort him out. So I sat in the living room with him. We had like one of these salt lamps in there, so it was nice calming. I was like, oh, what's up, mate? And he was wearing Jungle Book pajamas. And he just pointed to blue on his pajamas and like 3 times and then hid under his blanket. I mean, he carries his blanket everywhere with him, just hid under it. And I didn't push for any more because I thought, I can't push this. So I'm going to ask him. He doesn't even talk. I can't ask him what. But it was just one of those experiences that me and him shared that was like,
wow.
What?
Yeah. The bear.
Yeah. And so I was just like.
So when your little boy Jesse, when you say you might have felt like you saw signs with him and stuff, but you'd heard that people said girls develop quicker and all that. So what was that like for you? How was that for you? I think
it's difficult to say, innit? Because when people say, "Oh no, don't worry, boys are slower," the milestones that you expect children. I mean, children are never going to hit them all on the exact same day. Yeah. But you expect them to be around the ballpark. You know, like for instance, both our girls, 2 years old, potty training was like done like that. Yeah. And Jesse's not now. He's 5 years old, and he's not. And they've told us not to push it for a while. Right. But it's just not. Sometimes he'll go and do it, but a lot of the time it just doesn't. There's no recollection in his head that I should go get someone to go to the toilet, or I should myself go to the toilet. Sometimes he does. Most of the time not. So it's just little things like that. At that point, at 2, we thought, okay, we should start training him. Didn't work whatsoever. Nothing worked. And then there was other milestones like talking, and the words never came. And then they said, oh, we should be stringing a sentence together. It was actually the nursery that he goes to that they'd started to notice more as well. So I think Louisa was one of the ones that had noticed it the most. Obviously being so close, you know, the mother bond. She'd noticed a few things, but we didn't question it too much. And it was when he went to nursery that we decided what they were telling us as well, maybe it's worth looking into. So they were brilliant. They absolutely organised everything for us, pushed us in this direction with him. And we started to get a few more answers, and things started to make sense. And then when the diagnosis actually came, was a bit of a shock, because we expected like a 4-year journey.
Yeah, that's the way I was going to get to, where you were saying you kind of prepared yourself, and you know there's going to be a 4-year kind of, basically a window of development, and we're going to analyse and see where we go. But then they sort of say to you in the next breath. Yeah,
and plus people that then at that time as well, ended up tattooing a lot of people that had autistic children. So it's like it falls in at the right time. And they were saying, the journey takes ages, and you never get any answers, and you're just constantly thinking. But for us, it straight away. So we questioned whether or not is it so obvious in him, or are they just better at spotting it now? But like I say, within an hour after you've been told it was going to take 4 years, I mean, you look at him and you think, yes, there's things that he's slow in, but there's things that he is absolutely sailing at, like dinosaurs, for instance. Absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs. Can say some of these words that I can't even say. You look at a dinosaur and you think, I mean, it's one of them, isn't it?
It's a long neck.
Yeah, it's one of them. And he knows the words. Yeah. He says them. Absolutely obsessed with them.
Wow.
So there's areas where he really works,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like the communication level. So one of the key things for us spotting it was there was no recollection to you calling his name.
Right.
So when you'd call his name, he wouldn't come. And so both me and my wife were like, then took him to one of these health visitor meetings, and they were, well, maybe we should test his hearing. Is it his hearing? Because, say for instance, his favourite nursery rhyme comes on,
He's-
the other side of the house.
Yeah. Got
Yeah,
it.
running. So it was. I think it's just a communication level that is really difficult. And we can get him on board to do things, especially if he really wants to do them. But the communication and getting him to do something he doesn't want to do, or that is taken away from the focus that he's on something now, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a journey as well. But it seems like every now and again, we just have these little mad experiences. I was on the phone to my wife one day. I'd had a break at work, and she was like, "Jesse's talking to someone, and there's only her in the house, and he's wandering off, waving, talking to somebody that's not there."
Right.
Now, my wife's not into as much, deep self-reflection as myself. She doesn't necessarily. I wouldn't say she didn't believe in ghosts, but doesn't think about things like that necessarily.
Of course, yeah.
Which is weird because of the state of her dreams and things like that. She's had an out-of-body experience. She has these dreams that are profound. I'm surprised that she doesn't. But for her to ring me and say that was one of those things where you were like, okay.
And what have you got any sort of inkling? Is it the bear or what is it?
I don't know. I never know, with these experiences. So when it comes to experiences like that, there's never really anybody that can point you in the direction of understanding it fully. So with that particular experience in that bear, I then happened to leave a studio I was working at and move to a different studio. And it feels to me like when I look back at it now, I can see these things fall into place.
Right.
So Logan, who owns the shop I work at now, his mother-in-law was a shamanic practitioner. And I'd met her before because she was tattooed by a guy previously owned a shop I worked in. And she came in one day and was like, "Oh, hello, I haven't seen you in a while." And so I said to her, "Oh, you're like this." I started meditating and I had this experience and told her all about it. And then she was like, "Well, you should come along to this shamanic meditation group that I've got." So I went along and she kind of basically taught me and anybody that was there how to connect with, I don't know whether you want to call that. I'm not going to. You could say it's a spirit guide or something like that. People have words for it, but it's like almost like like Carl Jung with his archetypes.
Yep.
It feels like it repeats itself over to me for some reason.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure why, but in certain times of crisis, or if I want to head in a direction, it'll sort of be nudged at, and you'll see it somewhere. So I don't necessarily, like if you was to speak to a psychic and they said, "Oh, I sit down and talk with my guides," nothing like that has ever happened with me. It's just a notification, like on your phone when something pops up, then you've got to do
you're
that.
just getting that.
Yeah, but it always comes.
Something's
It always comes in this reality.
clicking and pulling you.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a transcendental thing. It comes in this reality. So I can be talking about something that I want to do, or I'm questioning some. There was a situation that I decided to. I won't go into because it's quite a personal one, but I decided to do something to help this situation, and I was thinking in my mind about it. And then all of a sudden, I think I was in a shop at the time, and when thoughts are racing in your mind, I was in a shop and I looked up, and it's a white bear, and there it was on this like can, just a picture of a white bear. And I remember because that's what it's like. It's like a confirmation for me that okay, look back at what I was just thinking, that whatever this is, whatever's affecting, it just shows itself. For some reason, it showed itself in a direction that makes me go, okay, well, I'll follow that then.
And you trust it.
100%. And it sounds crazy, and I think to most people it would sound crazy, but when I see it, 100% follow it. Like, I remember the first time that I saw the confirmation, it blew me away. And it was a couple of days after the first seeing it, and I went to my friend Mark, who is the wise character I was telling you about. I was around his house, and so I'd seen the bear and the nun in this meditation, and I went into his kitchen and we was chatting away, and then I think it was like March, and he had one Christmas card left on his on his cupboard, and it was a white bear. Now, I had always figured it was a polar bear, but I later found out it wasn't. It was, it's a specific type of bear. It's called a commode or commode or something like that. Yeah. And it lives like 4 hours away from where my dad lives. It's the only place in the world it lives.
In Canada.
Yeah. And when I remember seeing the picture of it like on the internet after I'd seen this, it just came up on like National Geographic or something like that. I was like, that's the one. It's not a polar bear, it's that thing. And then I went into his living room and he had a book face down on the coffee table. And I flipped it over to see what he was reading, and it was a picture of a nun on the front. So when you get like kind of confirmations like that, you can deny it for a while.
You said the word synchronicity earlier in a different kind of context, but that's I think of these kind of moments that you're having, like I do think of them like that. Like that's
definitely
that kind of, there's a trust you've got. You trust this, even though it's unknown and unsure. And in the beginning, I imagine kind of pretty fucking freaky and like, whoa. But then when you lend yourself to go, okay, well, then you start to see a pattern, start to see, I bet you can almost place it.
No, that's the difficult thing.
Right.
It's one of those things where it kind of comes wherever when I seem to be thinking of something or wanting to head in a direction, then it props up. So it doesn't. So when you do like a shamanic meditation, you can head in that direction to try and meet it and do different things. I find that quite difficult. You've got the sound of the drum going, so the shamanic practitioner will be playing the drum, and you'll be connecting with it. It sends you into this kind of, had some really mad experiences, but they're quite jittery. So for me, it seems to be that this reality seems to be a little bit malleable in the way that not necessarily us, but something can give you these synchronistic moments and say, yeah, just follow that. So it's like when people experience the 1111 number. I remember experiencing that. That was another thing that came that you were like, what? So even points when I thought about changing studios that I worked at,
right,
it would come. And I remember telling people about it and thinking you're off your nuts. Even people that I told about it that said, oh, it's a bit fucking crazy, isn't it? Come on, it's just a coincidence. Have since messaged me asking what it's about because they've started seeing it.
Yeah.
So it's a mad thing, and it's helped mould the work that I do as well. Because when I've wanted to, I used to do a lot of conventions a few years ago, and I always felt like I really wasn't not necessarily worthy of being there, but I wasn't bringing anything new to the table. I wasn't bringing anything of me into my work to bring to the table, and so I decided to stop doing them. So the guy Liam that I was working with at the time, he carried on doing them. And he would ask me if you wanted to come and do it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And then after this started coming, I started playing with new ideas and new things that I wanted to. I decided to put some of these things into some of these thoughts that I was having about the world changing and introspection and things like that into my tattoos. Now, not everybody wants a tattoo like that. You know, there's some people that want a tattoo because I like it. There's some people that want a tattoo because it means something to them. It connects them to a loved one.
Something just specific.
There's so many reasons. And now I was wanting to put these ideas, these mad, crazy ideas into tattoos. So I think there's, I've done a couple on the nature of reality.
I've been looking through your stuff. Yeah,
there's some really stuff. Mental stuff in there. And there's also, I don't know if you would have come across, I got to tattoo Teresa, the shamanic practitioner, and we did some shamanic meditations before it.
Okay.
Which was, I can understand why tattooing used to be a spiritual practice. Right. Because when I did that meditation with her and then tattooed afterwards, there was this strange, I mean, only me and her are ever going to know what that experience was like. Right. Because we did the meditation and there was this visual, I was sat on a beach and this bear was at the side of me and there was a lion sat on the other side of me. And now the lion was supposedly her power animal. And there was this weird like fuzzing, and they both came into me, and then we was all three sat in the same space on the beach. And then I came out from this meditation, and I did this tattoo for her. And the experience that I had, And for her, she said it was like she wasn't being tattooed. She said it was an amazing experience.
So were you guys just in the studio and kind of sat down, made a space, and
No, we made a space for her in her shamanic practice,
Okay.
in the space that she does with all her work with all her clients.
Right.
We decided to do it there.
So you did it there.
And it was a profound experience.
And what about you then? Because at the start of this conversation, we talked about not being high while we tattooed. But then this is
it's a weird sort of high.
But this is a kind of like, and also you've tuned in together, haven't you? You've basically both just got on some frequency together.
It was profound. A profound experience.
And what was it like for you? Can you remember actually
It felt like as strange as it sounds, it felt like I wasn't personally holding the tattoo machine.
Right.
Now, and I know that sounds crazy, but it was one of those experiences where like it felt like something else was doing it, and so we did this lion tattoo in a mandala sort of image, and it just came. It felt like it went super fast.
How long was it, Stuart? I
can't even remember. Maybe about 7 hours, and 6, 7 hours, something like that. And it was super fast, and it just definitely didn't feel like I'd done it. You know when you do something, you look back and you go, "Yeah, I'm proud of what I did there." Not that I wasn't proud of it, but it just it felt like there was more.
More attachment, more.
Yeah. So I've been searching for doing like little practices with tattooing outside that. I have a friend, Lucinda. We did some intention-based tattooing on her feet. So she was about to go travelling, and we decided for her to write down all the intentions that she wanted to take with her travelling, and we would do these tattoos on basically all her toes. We did.
I think I looked at some of the pictures.
Yeah, and she'd be worth getting on this podcast because she's an amazing artist.
Okay.
She does like murals. She's a typographic artist, so it's kind of like graffiti, but really, really nice, neat graffiti.
We'll hook up then,
Yeah, you'll have her. So we did these feet tattoos, and I remember her asking what it was like afterwards, So when I say afterwards, I mean after she'd had the tattoo and she'd gone on this journey. She said sometimes it just felt like I was just walking on air, like walking on these intentions that she'd set that lay the path in front of you.
That makes perfect sense, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that led me to doing that was I watched a documentary about how water can hold memory.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So with this Japanese doctor Emoto, and he'd done a load of work with it. It's worth looking at because
I think I did see it.
And I thought I'm working with ink, and I'm injecting ink into people's skin. What aspects of my mind and what I'm thinking about at the time of doing it can affect that tattoo? And they're about to walk around with it on them now forever. Can it have an effect? Will it have an effect? Are the molecules of the water that's contained within the ink holding some crazy? I don't know.
I think the belief and the intention and the that can never. I mean, and it's such a difficult thing to try and articulate and to try and make any kind of practical sense of in our processing functional everyday lives. Oh, bins are here. It's difficult, but I do believe that, picturing your friend there, she's going off travelling, she's made all that space in her mind and in her future and in her trajectory and the bravery required and the discipline and the saving and the kind of stepping off into the unknown. Then the commitment of putting that into the skin, doing it with somebody they care about, somebody they've got, I imagine more of a connecting thing going on. You do that. It's a ceremony. I think it must be as close to ceremony as we pretty much get Western worldwide when people commit to doing something.
Yeah, I think there is this kind of. I mean, I think like a ceremonial kind of tradition for us in Europe is well and truly under the rubble somewhere. We can look back as far as the Druids and say that maybe they were the people that were doing it, but we have more modern cultures that are still practicing it. The Native Americans and South America. There's a lot of cultures around the world that are still doing it, but I think ours is buried so deep that it's almost like there's a resurgence of people wanting to do things like that, wanting to get a little bit more connected with, I don't know what you want to call it, whatever, all that is.
I just think the more fucking complex we get and the more digitized and kind of metallic, and there's a yearning in our DNA, isn't there? I think now more than ever we do feel there's something calling us to even if it's just I mean, look what's happened in the lockdown. People just out walking. Just out walking, like recreational walking. I've joked about it on this podcast. You can tell a recreational walker from a fucking I've got to get there walker.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
You know?
Because there's more.
Yeah. And then just like there's a leisurely pace, the rhythm.
There's no rush.
Like the mindset, the intention. I mean, you cannot come away from the importance of intention, or whatever we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like words. The word cunt. Is that a terrible word? Well, it
Depends
is
how you use it, really.
yeah, so that's my point. Bad analogy, but the point is intention on whatever it is we do is so crucial. And just something as simple as that. It just, in this lockdown, seeing people doing press-ups in a back garden, not necessarily driving to the gym and parking up and big breath because it's going to be full of people who are better at this than me and oh God, here I go, you know.
And
like,
one of the reasons it stops people from doing that in the first place.
Yeah, and this is kind of where I go. It's like full circle. We like freeze ourselves, like culture, the mirror of ourselves in the bigger sort of wider scheme of it all. Kind of on the one hand we take safety from it and kind of being part of the group and the hive, and then on the other hand we kind of, I don't know, we've frozen ourselves in our tracks in many ways.
I mean, I said right at the beginning of all this, the guy who owns the studio that I work at, this could be a really important piece of self-reflection for almost, but obviously different periods, the whole world, but at our period as it was coming into lockdown, the self-reflection that's going to go on inside some people is going to be profound for them, because now you don't have to rush anywhere. I mean, obviously there's people that do this, people that are doing the key work in the field. Absolutely. That we really need them.
But we're talking, this is a broad stroke of what's happened in this world at this point.
I do believe that this could be a massive game changer for the way people operate in this world. And I think people are starting to look at their health a little bit better with all this. I mean, whether that's we've got less money, so maybe we should buy certain foods, and maybe we should try different foods. Maybe we should, all the different things that people are now applying, because maybe there is a little bit less money, maybe that we've now got the time to cook that meal that we always said we were going to cook, or do those things that we said, read that book that I said I was going to read and never got the chance to read it. All those things that are now being done.
As simple as fucking hell, to get to Asda's is a nightmare. It's massive queue. But the local butchers and the local grocers that, do you know, we've lived here for 8 years and I've never, and all of a sudden you're chatting to your local butcher and then you start learning about, oh wow, and then.
I mean, I never go see the butcher. I'm a vegan,
so,
okay.
There you go.
So I don't see our butcher anymore. But in the windmill shop in our village, we did go there, but very, very rarely, because when you need all your tin stuff and your milk, we have like long life soy milk and things like that. When you're getting all that stuff, it's easy to then get the veg while you're in Tesco.
Of course, yeah, and you do it all in one foul swoop.
Exactly. And what it showed at the very beginning of this lockdown was that those businesses might not be able to support the demand of the people. Not that they can't, because they obviously do a good job of doing it every day, but when it comes to something like this, you know, when we saw people selling out of toilet roll, I mean, I don't watch the news or anything like that, so I didn't see that they'd gone this massive problem. And then things were selling out, and you were like, but then we went to some local places, and they would have them because people weren't running in there to get it all to the same
automatic
area. Yeah. Exactly. So you've got, I think, this focus that people had on, we can still see it a bit, but more at the beginning of the lockdown was that people focused on who was going to supply them, and let's get it quick, because we're going to be fucked in a bit. But when you realise, actually, things slowed back down again. So there was this hype at the beginning, and then it slowed back down. And like you say, everybody starts to visit the people that are closest to them, because not only is it easier because of the amount of queues that you're going to have to sit in. And,
the whole rigmarole of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I can understand it. I mean, I think my opinions on this whole thing are maybe not everyone's taste, but you can understand why people do it and why it's a massive thing, because there's so many people that want to get in there. But when you go into your local shop, you would question whether or not we were in this crazy period in time, because there's not that many people in there. They're pretty, all right, no issues. They're not wearing masks. They're not all gloved up, and they're all not saying, please stay 2 meters apart.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they want you to, but they're not telling you to.
Well, there isn't that corporate pressure, and, there's a camera and someone's going to get sued if we're not implementing the fucking blah, blah, and that whole, you know, and we talked a little bit like this, Aidan, didn't we, on the last podcast about what's the term for what I was talking about behaviour. I did a bad job of trying to recite
Behavioural sync.
Behavioural sync. So scale. This is something I keep coming back to. I'm kind of meditating on this thought as I keep coming back to, like, where's this all heading? What does it mean? What are we doing? What is my part in it? I keep coming back to scale. You know, as you're pointing out there, Stu, like, you're in your local shop. All of those same moral obligations apply. You know, we're all aware of this thing. You might be really scared and I'm not so scared, or whatever it is, but we're all prepared to do what we need to do and make other people comfortable. And we're in the local shop, and we're all going to adhere. Yeah, there might be a sort of a sign stuck up on a bit of A4 paper that's stuck up. There isn't these kind of, you know, factory formed, bright coloured signs on every, you know.
A little place for you to stand.
Yeah, but there's something in the smaller community, the smaller scale of it. We all adhere. We all, there's a better sense of community, a more just clear feeling. I feel like, anyway, just a clearer sense of respect. Of ultimately, when you get the numbers start to multiply, there's a diminished responsibility that happens. We just, you know, you go from that local shop and there's 8 of you in there, of which you see everybody all the time, and you get your, you know, your vegetables from Bob and Bob's in the, you know, and then you're in the queue in Asda's, and now you're kind of like, whoa, okay, there's lots of people here, don't know anybody, got to get in, got to get out. Maybe you feel threatened. Maybe some people are,
without a doubt, yeah.
You know, like, then all of a sudden we lose.
It's almost like the fear starts to seep in.
Yes.
And I mean, this is a perfect example of it. So I was stood in the queue in Tesco's, and you wait, you turn, you go in, and you go round your kind of one-way system you've got, and leaned over to, you know, like when you're kind of like, oh shit, yeah, I'll grab that. So you lean over to grab it, and there's someone just there. So they kind of look at you like you're in my 2 meter space, and you're, oh shit, because it's just not natural. It's not natural for you to act in that way. You've completely forgot. You're just grabbing something that you needed.
Yeah.
You're completely fine. You're not, you know, coughing on them or breathing on them or anything like that. But then people are worried.
Yes.
You know? I came across a lady today when I was out, and she was at one end of the aisle and I was at the other, and we were looking in the directions. I needed something that was near her, and she needed something that was near me. So it was kind of like this. I was like, should we just swap? Quickly scoot past each other. And I don't know if she expected that from me, or whether she wanted me to go round or what, but she was like, oh my God.
Well, because you can't get it right either, can you?
And every shop's got a different rule.
Yeah. And you just, the one-way system, and have you got that up there? Is that up there? Is this the study?
Yeah.
So this study, this behavioural sync, overcrowding. So the idea that, yeah, they did it with the rats, look, 1958, 1962. Something about that. They watched the rats. You do a much better job of explaining this than me, Aidan. But the more the rats' sense of community and togetherness was just absolutely perfect. Then you multiply those numbers, double those numbers, and then you start to see splitting off and grouping and anxiety.
I guess this is the nature of sociology, isn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of people will argue that it doesn't apply to humans, but my feeling is, as we've talked, you know, you're searching for something, your art, your creativity, your wonder, your next book you want to read, whatever that is. I often get that, and I feel like, is it not inevitable that when there's this many of us, we can't be intimately sort of engaged?
Yeah.
And there has to be like a you have to have a level of kind of distance just to stay in some kind of.
I know what you mean, but then when you come to these smaller communities, it's easier. I mean, as an example, I went to get all the veg from the veg shop, and the lady in there, she had all colours in her hair, and so I was like, you just reminded me. Louisa had asked me to get some tissue paper so the girls could have a little bit of, you know, when it bleeds out and goes into their hair, you know, something a little bit crazy for them. And went around and got it, and then so I was paying for everything, and she was like, do you know what, I've got some of these chalks left over at home, come back tomorrow morning and I'll give you them for the girls. Now,
lovely.
You're not going to get that in Tesco's.
No.
You're just not going to get that treatment in Tesco's.
No.
And it makes you, we did shop there before, but it was, like I say, because everything could be done at Tesco's all in one fell swoop.
Yep.
And And usually you've got the kids with you, but now you're going on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So now it feels like a forced job. But when you go to the village, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
You know, it's a job, and then you've got an interaction like that.
And it's almost like part of the tribal nature of being in that village, isn't it? You
course,
you go out and you deal with the community, and you share and you swap and you serve one another with different services. Amazon's great. Stuff comes to the door.
But how much quicker can it get with Amazon, though? You know, it's
aren't
tomorrow,
they talking about like? Aren't they talking about like? Well, they were talking about like you could literally get an hour click within an hour.
I remember reading about that. Like, do we need something that quick? Is there anything you need that quick?
But this is the thing. This is where I came to with Ollie in the last podcast, where I just seem to the couple of things that I've read this year, Sapiens, and I've just started a Carl Jung Memories, Dreams and Reflections, actually, to try and give me some kind of balance back, because the couple of books that I read, Sapiens and Civilized to Death, were kind of, at least left me feeling like this kind of diminished responsibility and scale thing. It's kind of my dilemma of how do we get past like our ingenuity and our evolution and our technological evolution, because you're creative and you want to know what you can do next. Now it might be in an artistic form and in a drawing form, or it might be in turning this vaporizer into a fucking God knows what as well. You know, and like our ingenuity seems to not know when to stop, and with that comes this whole just tidal wave of speedy just change. As you mentioned, it changes. We fear change. This big change that's happening in our culture, like down the middle, technologically, and ultimately that generally means convenience, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
which is lovely, but it's costing us hugely somewhere.
It's lovely,
but is it not meant to be that way though?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's lovely that you can get something at next day delivery. And if you're going to, like, say, I don't know, say if you're on a project, like my wife, she builds dolls' houses. She needed PVA glue, run out. Click. Have it an hour later. You don't have to. You can have a break and go back to what you were doing. That's great. But like you say, at what cost does that come? You know, this kind of level of what's going to deliver it in an hour? Is it going to be a person? Or is it going to be a fucking drone that comes and flies in and drops it off on your doorstep?
It's not long before it's that, is it?
Exactly. And then once that's in place, it's like almost like here's convenience, but alongside convenience, it's going to be called something else. There's going to be all these little small, low-flying.
All your shit's in the phone, and we're all mapped, and yeah.
And all of a sudden, you've got everything at the touch of your fingertips. But that's not the nature of how humans work. Things need to be worked for. You know, and this is why when it comes to finance, you can get everything straight away. There is not so much pride in what you've done to get there if you've had everything handed to you. I mean, and people can talk about people that get left money and whether they actually, what's the word? They kind of, they have an understanding of money and what the things that they are doing cost. We can argue that some may and some probably don't. But when you have to earn that money, when you have to go out and earn it with, you know, everything that you've got to use your hands to create that someone's going to want it. Like, you know, with me, with being tattooed, somebody wants that. They see how good you've done it. Yes, I want one of them. And then you have to create it for them.
And it is craft. The whole thing is, I guess, really, it is what this conversation has kind of arced back to. I mean, we've gone here, there and everywhere, but like the meaning, the depth of something, to earn something, because then it means something, and when it means something, you'll treasure it more. You'll be more grateful. It will travel to the next person with something. Yeah, something more solid about
intentions
it. Yes,
behind it,
intentions.
and the effort that's say, for instance, if you was to create something like this little piece, if it's hand carved, the value of it's so high. But if it's machine carved in China, say, it doesn't have as much value to it because the machine's pumping it out at 10 to a dozen. Yeah. But then you've got a one-of-a-kind thing that somebody's created. The power in that, the amount of time they may have taken to do it, it was worth waiting for, you know, because there's only one of them. Sometimes things are just worth waiting for.
Isn't that the fucking dichotomy of where we are, of our ability now and our brilliance in just creating at the speed of light, literally. But there's this yearning that is clear now, and especially I think in our generations, you know, where we've got young children and we're seeing the speed that they're changing at. You know, they don't have textbooks even a lot of the time now, things like that. It's so quickly it's happening, and it seems to be pretty universally in my little world. Whether we can articulate it to one another or not, it feels like underneath there's a bubbling for like, fuck, we need something meaningful,
like a return,
tangible. And I think you might have nailed it, Stuart, with this lockdown, this thing giving us, even without us knowing it. I mean, I know I've paid a lot of attention because probably like you, I do wonder all the time about what does it mean, you know, and I'll try and take those moments. I'll try and be present and watch myself in a moment, however mundane, you know. With the kids growing up,
to gain that awareness over yourself.
The kids are growing up so quickly. I'll just stop sometimes and just, it might be something it might trigger me, something as little as one of them might just say, Daddy, look what I've done. You know, and I might be busy, and then I'll stop, right, and look what he's done, and then I'll kind of zoom out at that moment and go, wow, he's 6, showing me the first time he's ever tried to draw whatever it may be. And I've got good at now, like catching myself in those moments a bit. I think I've learnt this from the tank, probably for me. I mean, I've tried to meditate, and I have spells of meditating, and I can do it now, because the art is you don't do it, you just
I think that's the thing with meditation. A lot of people say that I can't really do it, but there is nothing to do.
I think we all sit there and we get uptight about right, okay, and you've got to look like, you know, and actually for me the tank's massive, because I just drift off.
You completely switch off
in there, and have done for a long time.
So I use a specific method in meditation. No, it's not a method. It's just, you know, so people can have their hands in all different positions. But when I'm sat meditating on my own, I think the one thing that makes me gain awareness the most is put your thumbs together, because if you feel it hard pushing, you know that you're too tense about something, and if it's too light, you're letting go. So it's about the constant awareness. So if you can feel the touch, that's good. You feel you pushing.
Where did you pick that up from? Is that
I
just
can't
something
even remember.
I
can't even remember where that came from. But now I use it, so I will sit like that, and as soon as I feel it drifting, it means that okay, I'm losing something. I'm like, am I falling asleep? Am I just lost in thought? And then the other one is too tense. Is it something's? I'm clearly on that thought. There's emotion attached behind it, and I'm attacking myself for it. Relax. And it gives me the most amount of awareness, because I believe that awareness that you were talking about is the most important thing, because I still catch myself doing it now. And I think that's the most important thing, is bringing that awareness quicker to the point where you can be aware all the time. Because although we think we are, we're not.
No, God, no.
Because I catch myself in moments of frustration with the children. They've done something, they're arguing about something, and you're just like, ooh.
Yeah.
And you shout, and you know there's a little argument ensues, and then you realise, maybe I should have reacted a little bit better than that. So bringing that awareness is so important, and I think for me meditation has been that one key that, you know, as they say, the tanks as well, that bring it closer to being at the point where, for instance, in anger, people say I saw red, and then that was it. I was an hour later, I realised what I'd done, or 2 days later. Yeah, we've got to bring that to here.
No, that's a nice analogy, because that's kind of, I think we can all recognise that one. We've all had that red, and that, and we know that we absolutely can sit back and watch that version of ourselves and go, oh fuck, man, yeah, that was. But actually, again, in the everyday grinding of life, getting to the job and making sure the ironing's done, and you know, shit, the gas bill just landed, right, I'll sort that out. Like, it's so difficult, and then you get daddy, and hang on a minute.
Yeah.
But I'm so pleased that I've started to pull that out, especially with the kids, because as it's already proven, they come and go so fast. You know,
you get those moments where you just look at them and go,
I had one tonight in here. Yeah, I had one in here tonight. As you know, when you got here, Stu, we was messing about with bits and stuff getting started. And the oldest one came in, he's 6 now. And he wanted me to do his face as the Hulk. He's got his Hulk suit on, and can I paint him as the Hulk? I said, okay, I can. But he said, I don't want my eyes doing, Daddy. Just do the bottom. Okay, so do the bottom. And as he's standing there, he keeps like, he's like, I said, no, just relax, darling, just relax. And we do a bit of meditating at night. So some nights the boys think the boys think that they've got a little bit of a pull on me, right? I like to think I've got one on them, so I introduce them to things all the time, and I explain to them whatever it might be. We went through a stage of watching, just to give you a bit of backstory on what I'm about to tell you. So it might be like we're watching rock films, okay? So we watch Jumanji, and they love Jumanji. And they love The Rock because he's big and he's strong and he's saving people and he's kind and all these things. So I sort of find the best sort of inroads to The Rock to give him. And I'm like, he does training and he's always training and he eats his vegetables, when you're eating your broccoli. I said,
you can't get like that without
you
doing
can't,
it.
yeah. And even brushing his teeth. Daddy, why is The Rock's teeth, why are your teeth yellow and The Rock's teeth white? I said, well, because The Rock brushes his teeth every day, 3 times a day, probably. And anyway, I managed to get, whatever they love, we just find a way of exploring it with them and just coaxing out the things that we can use to sort of go move in that direction. So when we've been going to bed at night, a couple of times I said to him, well, do you want to meditate? Because we went through a Bruce Lee stage, right?
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, meditate. So we meditate. And we lived in Thailand and they know the Buddha and it's been part of our life. So they were aware of it. But I sort of said, look, and they now cottoned onto that, thinking that it's kind of, it keeps me in the room. So when I've read to them and I'll cuddle with them and it's who wants to cuddle first and that whole game. All right, Daddy, see you in the morning. And then they'll think, meditate, Daddy, we haven't meditated yet. And it's like, it keeps me there, you see. Yeah. So, okay, if you want to.
I'm going to take that trick because I've been trying to get my kids to meditate. So I say, try and get them to do it with me. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think kids need it because their awareness is a lot higher than us as adults. They haven't got that whole lifetime of the bullshit that comes with growing up. But I'm definitely going to use that because when I do it, they're like, oh.
I've found that to be a really cool way because it's nighttime anyway. And I've always, I read Matthew Walker's book earlier this year as well, Why Do We Sleep? And the whole, I'm probably on a similar thing with that you are, is like just certain things come into consciousness and I sort of ruminate on them and try and bring them in and take something from it and move it through, but I'll move it through with the children as well. So when we sit there, I would only do something like 10 breaths with them, but I'd, we'd sit straight, and I'd explain, we just sit nice and comfortable, and I have been telling them actually to sit, sit with their back straight. I have been saying that to them, sit up nice and straight, and I said, all we're going to do is just 10 breaths, because when you lay down, what we'll do 10 big breaths, and then when you lay down, all of that blood, it will all be rushing around your body, and it will just go to all your organs, and that's when you're going to grow tonight. And when you've got all of that oxygen in your blood, that's when your muscles are going to get fed, and you're going to get the strongest you're going to be. And I said, and your dreams will be. And so we do these 10 breaths, and they're good at doing it now. And then at the end, they namaste, Daddy, namaste. Nice. You see, and we have, and then sometimes if they have done a really good job, they'll say, oh, Daddy, I can see like purple and gold. And half the time they obviously can't. But we've talked about the colours and can you feel a tingle in your fingers? Because sometimes they've gotten to a point where they've done big breaths, and they have actually literally gone like, ooh, like he's laid in his bed and he feels a bit funny, he's a bit giggly.
Yeah, I think there's power in breath.
Yeah,
so when I do yoga and I practice pranayama with a yoga teacher and trying to do a bit on my own, specifically like a method called Kriya, all these kind of Indian terms that they give because she's a proper like Hindu philosophy based Kundalini Tantra yoga teacher. So it's not like yoga at the gym. So she uses all the Sanskrit names, which I can never remember. So hard to say, as well as all the teachers that have come in the past. Trying to remember their names is really difficult. But these breathing techniques can be so powerful because you do them before, and then you have this kind of practice of yoga, and then you have meditation afterwards. And the meditation is always more powerful after all these breath works and then moving your body. Yeah, exactly. So there's some power in it. And I know Wim Hof talks about it a lot as well. Yes. It's building your immune system with your breath. He even talks about releasing DMT through,
that's a whole other podcast. I think we'll do that one.
Yeah, definitely. There's that's some crazy subject, that one. But there's so much in it, and it's just breathing. And it's the whole all about awareness, like you said. There is no awareness to our breath. So when you walk about your day and you're doing all the things that you're doing and you're not aware of your breath whatsoever. So I think my yoga teacher says that you have, as they say in Hindu philosophy, you have a certain amount of breaths. And when you are anxious, when you're fearful or anything like that, they speed up. or when you're in a situation that's got you a little bit fight or flight, it all starts speeding up. When you start slowing it down, what you're doing is you're allowing those, amount of breaths to last as long as they possibly can. So the more you live in without awareness, the shorter your life is.
Yeah.
So they say we should be living to about 120 in Hindu philosophy, but we don't, because we have these steps where we just
fucking stressed.
Because we're not aware. As soon as you become aware, and this is one of the most profound things about some of these teachings, is that when you're aware, you have no disdain for anything. You're enjoying the washing up.
Yeah.
Because you're completely aware of it.
Yeah.
And when you're aware,
you're just not, there's no time and energy or even space for...
You're just completely aware. And that's all that exists.
Well, it's funny because the boy was stood here and he wanted his face painting. And the long way round of me getting to that was the meditating thing. I said, look, and he was crunching his face up and he was like trying to do all the right things. All he had to do was stand there. I said, well, tell you what, just concentrate on your breath like you do when you're doing your meditating. So then he starts going... like, and I'm
like trying to follow his face.
I'm like, no. I'm thinking, shit, bless him. I said, no, not the really deep ones. I said, just concentrate on it. Just think about it. Think about it like a wave. Just coming in and coming out. So then he was like, but then he started moving back and forth like that. And I said, I tell you what. I said, just don't think about anything. Just breathe. And then he just stood there and he just did it. But like, I hope that, as I sit with my kids of an evening, it's not like I'm trying to, like any dad or any parent, just trying to put things there. There's a guitar in the bedroom. There's a piano in the, things that we love, we want to share, and we hope that they'll love or they'll show just an interest or whatever. And I thought that with that meditating, and I thought, you know what? And like I say, they now see it as like, it's kind of like an extra 5 minutes with dad. That's great. But they love doing it. And as you say, their awareness is through the roof anyway. But what I like to think, my kind of philosophy with it is that it's laying some foundations for that space in their heads. Do you know what I mean? Definitely. Like as a concept per se.
Of course, because they don't learn by what we tell them to do. They learn from what we do.
Yeah, by seeing us.
Exactly. And when you become aware of things like that, and then you always have to catch yourself thinking, like for instance, if I'm sat on my phone, and I know my 9-year-old daughter wants a phone, but we've said it's too early. Secondary school you can have one, or well, actually I've given her. She'll like this. She has 10 books that I give her to read, and it's £10 a book. It equals £100 at the end of it, and then that should buy you a phone.
Wow.
And so she's like, she'll come to me every now and again with this book. I didn't choose that one. So she's trying to get there, but where I was going with this is that I can be sat there on it, and sometimes I catch myself, just doing the thing that we all do, flicking through it. Yeah. And then, when I say, you can't have a phone because you're too young, when you've got your iPad, that's fine, you can go on that, but if you're on that for too long, and then she'll question me and say, you're on yours?
Yeah.
And you're like,
of course.
Oh, now what do I say? What do I say? Well, I'm an adult.
I'm sending an email.
Yeah, I'm using it for work. And then the fact that you're having to explain it means that you're not leading by example.
Yeah.
And being aware kind of doesn't make you feel like shit, but makes you think like, maybe I need to be a bit more, if I'm going to teach them to do something, maybe I just need to be a little bit more aware of what I'm doing, not necessarily just around them, but in general. And I think as long as we can learn, because that was one of the most difficult things, was having kids in a period where you'd started to try and gain more awareness, that you now have to almost parent yourself as well as you're parenting them, which becomes a task of, parenting a 33-year-old child.
So how have you found the lockdown then with the kids and obviously with work? So do you work from home? Are you working in a studio? How do you do it then?
And at the minute I'm working in Sleaford, a studio. It's called Hazard's Parlour. It's an absolute great studio, full of great characters, really great artists. So I'm there most of the time. So my time is taken up by being there, usually an 8-hour tattoo per day. You've got maybe an hour either side of it, getting there, having a coffee, setting up, cleaning down, etc., etc. That's all been taken away. So I absolutely adore spending time with my kids. There was this kind of, at the beginning, like, I'm I'm going to really enjoy this level of introspection. I'm going to get back on top of my meditation game. I'm going to get some more books read.
Got all this time.
Yeah, I'm going to spend a bit more time with Louisa. I'm going to spend more time with the kids, try and reconnect, because, you know, the fact that I'm out of the house all the time is one of the things that really got me is when the kids say, well, you're never here, because I'm always at work. And that always makes me feel a bit, I should be here more. I should be working to live, not living to work.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So at first I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's absolutely great. And we did lots of stuff. We did lots of schoolwork. We tried to, I think wrongly, we tried to really get them into the schoolwork like it was a school day.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, it lasted about a day or two where we were like,
squeezing
we're
it
not
a bit.
built to be teachers.
Yeah.
Even though you're a parent and almost like a constant teacher, you're not built to be
Of course.
a tutor.
Yeah.
So we kind of like knocked it on the head a bit, and we're just doing bits. We're not doing anything. This is a time of confusion for everybody. We're not going to start saying,
I think that's a healthy vibe, I think.
I mean, I think we've seen a lot. You know, this is one of the things that social media does, is it allows you to see what other people are doing. They only obviously share the best bits. So you get to see people that are clearly doing a very good job with it. And this is one thing that me and my wife have been talking about a lot, is that we don't necessarily believe that this is a period for kids to be learning things that when you leave school, you realise you didn't need half the shit that you learned.
Yes.
So we don't think it's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily think it's a time for them to be learning that stuff.
Let's teach them about tax.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly. This is how you get a mortgage.
Yeah.
But, so we've been doing a lot of art-based stuff.
Yeah.
Because my missus is quite creative. She likes to build dolls' houses, although she hasn't had the equipment to do it in this lockdown, which has been a bit crazy for her. So she's maybe been a bit less creative than she wanted to be. But lots of painting with the kids, lots of drawing, trying to get them to... We've also binge-watched like Avatar, The Last Airbender with the kids. Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
It's doing the things that you just get to... Even now, just sitting on the sofa with them.
Yeah, just doing nothing.
Exactly. It's something that is so enjoyable. But then this, at the back of your mind, there's this thing like, okay, money's dwindling. You know, that little money monkey on the back of your mind going, you've got to get back out.
Doesn't go away, does he?
And naturally, being the job that I do, we are last on the list. We are absolutely last on the list, because I can't...
Human contact's in its fullest, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally minus, you know... I'm inside somebody, basically.
Yeah.
You know, there's only prostitutes, I think, that do it closer contact.
Yeah.
But so we're last on the list to go back.
Mm.
And then, you know, money is going down, so I'm going to have to find a new way. The way my business is built, I can't claim a self-employed thing, so I'm going to have to go out and get a job.
Mm.
So I'm going to get a job in the meantime, just to bring some cash in. But then it's one of those things where it's like, actually, to kind of have the level of money that I had before, I'm going to have to work more than I was working before in this period, which was a difficult thing, because, you know, I got offered the job today, and it's working with plants, which is like a hobby of mine. I like to get in the garden and grow plants, absolutely grow all sorts. And I just thought, that's going to be great. It's going to be wicked. I can't wait to do that. But then I thought, well, the amount of time that I've got to put in, it's going to take away from this period, that this lockdown, we're never going to get it back. I mean, unless they say there's a second phase and you're going to have to go on lockdown again.
I think I've got well, it's not a sneaky feeling, I just can't help but think that this is the start of a new world. I think we're going to be...
Yeah, I keep hearing the term, the new normal, which is difficult as a social being to say, well, hang on.
I mean, it doesn't seem real. I just still can't get my head around it.
Like, you woke up one morning and you're in an alternate reality where things are different. Like, you've got friends that you don't know whether to... Oh, hang on, do I...
Yeah. Are you cool? Are we... Yeah.
What's going on?
Upsetting somebody? Is someone gonna, you know,
or
offended?
Oh, there's someone watching.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I read somewhere on one of the social medias, someone in the tattooist community had said that they'd seen that some tattooists were advertising to do tattoos, which would clearly void your license. You know, it's not worth doing. And then someone had commented on it saying, like, dob them in, basically. And it was like, well, yeah, you could do that, but then, I mean, what's the point in that? And then this person had also said, I dobbed in my neighbours for having a barbecue. I just thought...
Man. Yeah, I mean, that's just a weird energy that you're putting into the world, I think.
There's been moments in history where there have been things like that, where people have been asked to do things like that, you know. Yeah. And how far does it go?
That side's totally, yeah. I really, I mean, luckily, touch wood, round where we are now, people have been pretty cool, and there's a definite feeling that, I guess, coming back to that village mentality of like, we're all kind of aware subconsciously of this thing, where maybe our instincts are telling us a bit different, but we're respecting one another and different boundaries and things, you know.
As well as the guidelines aren't there just, well, at least we can hope they're not there for bullshit reasons, but we can hope that they are there to protect us, you know. So there is a level of adherence which is needed, but I also think that there's going to be massive issues as a result of it. So we don't need to be 100% take measures out, making sure that you are that level of distance apart, and that you do make sure, if your neighbour's having a barbecue, lean over and say, look, I'm going to have to tell someone about this.
Give us a sausage and I'll keep it to myself.
It's just a crazy world. And I'm half the time, you know, we sit back and I'll talk to the missus. We sit in the conservatory and we'll be like, what's just, we just want it to go back to normal. But then you think, can it ever?
I watched an episode of The Midnight Gospel, Duncan Trussell. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
I've seen a clip of it and not watched it.
Fantastic. I mean, having met you and talked to you tonight, Stuart, with those existential kind of questions and wonderings, I mean, I think you'll enjoy it. Yeah. I mean, the art's fantastic. And I want to say that they've taken like chunks of the dialogue from his podcast, from the Duncan Trussell Family Hour.
On the Joe Rogan podcast.
He goes on there a bit, yeah. But his podcast, I don't know how aware of Duncan you are, but I think you'd really enjoy him. He's very, very spiritually inclined and very deep, has very meaningful questions and a beautiful lexicon and an ability to communicate ideas. But he's kind of got that. There's a bit of that. I think he's from Ohio. And there's a bit of that kind of old school American stoner in him, which is his comedy's fantastic. But that Midnight Gospel, I've got some artwork coming for in the studio actually. Watch an episode of that. My wife Alex and I, we were having the chat of like, fucking, every now and again it's just coming over us like, what the fuck's going on? You know, like those moments when it's like, what is really fucking going on right now? And we watched an episode of that, and it's just fucking mind-boggling. He puts his head in the vaginal, transporter where he shoots off to a different planet.
I think that might have been what the clip that I saw.
And he just, like, simulator is, and he just picks an avatar and he goes to a place. But I want to say that they're taking chunks from his podcast, which is kind of like the main dialogue of when he gets somewhere, and the animation and this whole kind of play out is happening around this long kind of dialogue. And then they've dressed it with, I want to say that, I might be wrong, we'll have to check that, I don't know, Aidan. But what a powerful show. I mean, for these kinds of questions and this kind, and if you're, psychedelically inclined, and the art and the ideas that he's posing, like life and death and meaning and connection and stuff.
I think just from listening to the way you've described it then is, so he is at some point, and he chooses an avatar to enter into a certain reality.
Yes.
I think there's a massive metaphor in that one. Not even necessarily a metaphor, like, that kind of, there's consciousness and then enters a being. And you are that consciousness, and every avatar he enters, he's also all of them, but ultimately he's the consciousness.
You've nailed it, Stu. I think you're gonna love this show. And it's beautiful as well from an artist's point of view. It really is beautiful and so clever. The humour's clever. But like I say, I might be wrong, but I'm sure it takes chunks of the podcast, because that kind of dialogue is just so in the moment that I think it'd be very difficult for them to kind of recreate that all the time and just write it out. And the play out of the art and the journey of whatever the episode is and the avatar that he's gone into is just, and then boom, then he bolts back, and he's back in his little sort of, I guess, like Ready Player One kind of style. Did you see Ready Player One? He's in a sort of a broken down caravan situation, but got all the gadgets and all the weird,
nice. And it's just
really
like super
that.
Psychedelic cartoon. Like, what's that? With the Finn and Jake.
Is it Rick and Morty?
Adventure Time.
Oh, Adventure Time. I don't know if I've seen that.
I've not really seen much of Rick and Morty. A lot of people say to me, there's some ideas in there that you're going to love it.
I've seen bits, but I've never got on it. But this because of Duncan, I I wanted to just check it out because I had an inkling that he's asking these questions, he's wondering these things, you know. And I thought it was absolutely fantastic. But yeah, my wife and I literally just had one of those moments the other night where we were like, this is nice and stuff, this is lovely being with the kids, but like sometimes when you really stop and think about it, it's really scary, you know, and what's it going to mean and what does it look like? And then, you know, like I say, the conversation about we're going to send the school back, and she said to me, you know, what do you think? And I'm like, if the kids are going to be all, you know, like they're in a little strange kind of hospital situation where everyone's got to be at 5 and 6 years old, the brains are
education's already enough kind of like level of indoctrination,
yes,
that you don't want to instill this kind of like idea, well, this is how we're going to have to act for the rest of
because
your
you're
life.
imprinting them at that point, like with behavior patterns that they're going to take into further growth and development, you know, like I find that that's a scary one.
I think especially the ages they want to send back, it seems like, I mean, Jesse has had a position at school the whole time because of his special needs, but he wouldn't be able to have his one-on-one carer, which he's got at school, which was, for us, it was pointless. The girls are at home anyway, so you might as well just keep him at home. That he would be the only one going back.
And that whole dynamic throws everything.
Yeah, I mean, yes, he definitely needs it in more for the socialness, and because he's not going to get an academic thing out of school. It's not going to be. I mean, we can hope that this tends to be one of those things that just is more prevalent when he's young, and it just be because our views. We remember we had to fill in a form to basically to say what our projection of the future is with Jesse, and it's starting to change now, which is really nice because he's a quirky little character. So there's some hilarious things, and we're now starting to change that. So we don't think that he is going to be academically inclined. So school's not really going to be anything but a good social experiment for him, basically to allow him to deal with different people, because he can be quite closed to a lot of people. So, you know, when you're saying it's time to go, he'll either not want to go or he'll get straight in the car and he won't say bye to anybody. He'll just, you know, he'll be gone.
Got you.
For the girls, we can't really send him and not them, because they're the ones who are actually missing the socialness and a little level of maybe they are missing a little bit of order.
Yeah, of course, and the challenge of, you know, doing stuff and nice,
Exactly,
neat borders and, you know, just,
But it seems like I would rather experiment with myself, send me back into the world. If this is a massive deal, I'll deal with it and then bring the information home, rather than using the kids to go back before I go back to work.
Yeah, I think that's wise, yeah.
That seems like, well, let's use them first. And that seems like, you know, like the Gurkhas in the army, we were like cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Do we really want to?
Yeah.
But my opinion is that this is nothing to worry about anyway. You know,
Right.
I'm not a scientist, I'm not a medical practitioner or anything like that, but I personally believe that
Something we move through.
99% of us are going to be absolutely fine. There are the people that need protecting, and we should put in place things to protect them. But then the rest of the world should be able to just mould, not necessarily close, mould around what's going on. But who really knows? I'm not in a position to make those rules, so I don't really often go into them, because
You said
what's
it.
the point in worrying about something
You said it earlier.
earlier.
You said it earlier. You know, you've got to let it all come over you, and I think you've exhibited that whole attitude tonight. And I listen. This has been amazing, and thank you for coming and doing it.
Thanks for inviting me.
You know, and I know there's a load of things that we're going to cover in the future. So nice one, Stuart.